And I think you and I touched on this in the last discussion, but the faculty basically want to outsource the administration. Now, there was a book written in 2011 by Benjamin Ginsberg, where it's called The Fall of the Faculty, where he talked about how professors' roles in the university system has changed. It used to be that professors essentially took turns running the college. Like it was like, okay, I'll serve as the president, I'll go back to teaching, then you're going to serve, all that. But after a certain point, professors stopped volunteering for the positions because they wanted to spend more time researching and all that. They were hoping, I want to do what I love. I want to earn prestige that way. I want book deals, etc. So they essentially outsourced the administration to other people. Now, this is good and bad because the one side of it is that you have people who aren't as competent or aren't as familiar with teaching and being serving as faculty running things, but then the other side of it is this frees up the faculty to focus on research and other things. So it's kind of a double-edged sword here. And I've sort of seen this in restaurants as well, where there's certain people who may be great at cooking and then they move up to management. They may move up to being a sous chef or something. They're not as fit for that. They're better at cooking. But at the same time, a lot of people don't want to be line cooks forever. And I think it's a similar thing here. There became a whole professional administrators class, but they have different reasons for that. Like, for example, there's some people who just are better at administration. There are some people who they use that to gain their prestige. Like if you're president of Harvard, of course, that carries a ton of weight. Some people just, I guess, just like running things. So there are different incentives here. But I think in general, professors decided we'd rather focus more on our own research than on running the administration. Any thoughts or anything on that?
No, there seems to be, and this is something we would mention before, where this idea of schooling in like industrial schooling as it is, this factory schooling type of thing, is the experiment. In general, people were learning through apprenticeship, by professors coming to the homes, by tutors, things like that. And I think that's coming back. I don't necessarily understand why they thought creating these physical institutions where people come to this single location and stay there for an extended amount of time will somehow prepare people for the rest of the world with the moving and the way things change. It seems to be a stranger way. Let's create this one environment that is very unique, very insular. Your food is being cared for, your shelter is being cared for, your day-to-day is being cared for. You're being put around people who are very familiar to you, same age group, kind of same purposes. And then we're going to throw you out in the world where none of that is really, really the case. And so it's kind of like what's going on here? We know from the start of the year this is what we're going to teach you every day. You get in the actual office, that's not the way things are. Things change constantly. So it's just, I don't understand why that system has been set up that is just so against what reality actually is. It's an odd thing.
Well, I always had the discussion with people about culinary school versus the real world, because in culinary school, it's okay, make like a plate of mashed potatoes and you have hours to do it. In restaurants, it's okay, here's a list this big of things and you better get this done in like 3 hours. So you have to figure out, okay, I get this roasting, I get this on the stove, okay, I get this going here, I'm cutting this, and then these things, then I'm going to puree this. And you have to find ways, okay, how do I get all this done in a certain amount of time? And it's like school, they replicate that in certain areas, like when you work in the restaurants, but it's like it doesn't compare to real restaurants, especially if you work in places that feed hundreds of people with a few staff. You have to figure out, okay, how do I get all this done in such a short time?
Yeah. Like I understand learning some of the things where you're supposed to just these things to be second nature, kind of just like in sports, you play basketball or you learn, so you can just be like, okay, if I need to shoot it's muscle memory, you're doing something, or if somebody says dice that, cube that, puree that, the difference. You don't have to ask the details. But I'm wondering when it comes to actual education, and that's why you have a situation where 80% of the people say they don't actually use what they actually majored in, because it's not preparing them for something that's actually practical. It's a strange situation. It seems like the main thing is like, oh, this person can show up to a certain location and follow the guidelines for an extended amount of time, and that seems to be the main thing that's being selected for, rather than the actual information that they learned or the worth or the value of the information. It's strange.
This will come up later in the discussion, but they've actually shown this, that students can't carry over thought processes in certain fields to other fields. Like they have that very rigid, like, okay, I apply the scientific method in this, then outside it's like, I don't know what to do. And it's like, well, no, you're supposed to be trained to apply this to everything.
Yeah, no, yeah. When that comes up, I have some more questions and thoughts about that, because there's ways to teach the critical thinking versus, and the thing there's critical thinking versus critical patterns. I think if it's like patterns, it's like if this content, this particular content, then I follow this formula. Instead of teaching this formula should be applied to all this content. It's a strange situation.
This is just a little bit of a divergence, but did I ever tell you about the guy from Harvard that I used to work with, that whole story?
No.
So I used to work at a retirement home. That was my first job. There was a cook there actually had a Harvard degree, and everyone was wondering, like, what's this guy doing here? And it turned out the story was that he went to Harvard. I guess his parents made him, like, it was a family legacy and they paid for it and everything, but it was his lifelong dream to become a chef. So he went to Harvard, went to Columbia. He got a master's, Columbia. He ended up going to the Culinary Institute of America, where I went later in life. And he said he was at a point where he had more money than he knew what to do with. So he was just working for fun and living out his dream. But the thing is, he was a terrible cook, like super nice guy, but terrible cook. But he's what we're describing, like super book smart, like great with numbers, but like no common sense at all. And like he would drive everyone nuts. And it was one of those things where, like, my old boss, when he got fired, he was like relieved, and he's like, I want to erase this guy from my memory, all this. But it was funny too, because like you looked at him, he didn't look like a chef. Like he looked like a college professor. Like he was kind of nerdy, like always reading stuff, like nasally voice. And you're like, this guy's really not in the right field. And like, I felt bad in a way, because it was like what he wanted to do versus what he should have been doing weren't the same thing. I guess he started his own business. He sells bread now or something, but it was just a tough thing. But it was like, I feel like academia turns out a lot of people like that, like very book smart, but like you have them, like if you were to give him a table and say, here, assemble this, like he would not know what to do. Like it's that kind of mentality. Yeah.
That's a weird thing.
He's one of I worked with this guy over a decade ago, but he still stands out in my mind, like one of the most memorable people I've worked with.
And I mean, and that's the kind of thing that goes where it's odd how when one thing is switched, people think everything else has to be switched somehow, or they don't recognize how switching one thing, or the inverse also there, they don't recognize how switching something that's very central could alter everything else. Like I just saw this one thing. I'm in this group, something like food crimes. Some of them are not really that much crime.
Oh yeah, you saw. I posted on that. Yeah.
Yeah, you should definitely join that group. It's an interesting group. But there's one where it was somebody cooking pancakes in the oven. They showed like they put the pancake batter, and then they put some strawberries and blueberries, and then you put it in the oven. They're like, oh, I'm never going to cook them on a pan again. And people are saying, send the recipe. And I'm like, why do you need the recipe? It's clearly just pancake batter put on put it in the oven. Like, and then on top of the send the recipe, somebody may be like, oh, maybe they mean the temperature. Maybe that's what I'm thinking now. But then even with the temperature, if you've actually baked enough, you know it's going to be about cookie temperature. It's about like 350 centigrade or Fahrenheit.
Fahrenheit,
like
75
or something. But you should be able to adjust. Shouldn't have to. Once you understand the content, you shouldn't have to get a recipe again. It's clearly pancake batter just put on a dish and put it in the oven versus on a pan. So it's kind of a weird thing.
You saw what I posted on that thread, the foie gras double down. Did you see that?
Oh yeah, the double down with the what's it called, with the
it's foie gras coated in bacon, fried with chicken skin mayonnaise and maple something. And it was funny because at Netta, towards the end there, I was talking to the last manager. He's like, "You like rich food?" He's like, "Ever try this?" And I was like, "No, even for me, that's probably too much. Like I could have like a very small like portion of it, or if it were like a croquette or something, but like a whole sandwich, I'm like, ooh, heart attack waiting to happen." That's at Joe Beef in Montreal, Canada.
It's at Joe Beef. So if anybody's ever in Montreal, Canada, go try that.
Anthony Bourdain had it on his show.
Have you actually had the double down? Like it's KFC that had it, right?
Yeah, this was a play on that, but I didn't. Yeah.
Have you had it yet? I haven't had it yet.
No.
They have one in Kenya. It's called the Nyama burger or something like that. It's the same thing: two fried chicken buns and then meat in the middle. I don't know. Or I think here in Kenya it was two fried chicken on the outside and like a hash brown in the middle. I didn't double check. Yeah. All right.
Okay. So next we're gonna move on to.
Thank you for listening. This has been a clip from an actual longer recording that I'll try to leave a link to on the screen or somewhere around here where you're listening to this.
Presents. 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 Presents.
Peasants.
Okay. Okay.